The blood on my claws wasn't mine. 3 cycles ago, I was Crystal Venomwalker, Death Singer of the Vorthri Empire, Slayer of 1,000 worlds. Now I'm trembling like a hatchling in the cargo hold of a human freighter, watching the one being in the galaxy who should fear me most calmly seal the airlock behind us. "You're hurt," he said, those strange forward-facing eyes scanning my torn carapace. I'd seen those eyes before, during the massacre of Helion Prime, where his kind had watched their colonies burn without flinching. Now they held something. I didn't recognize concern, I hissed, backing against the bulkhead. "Stay away, soft flesh. I am Apex Predator." "I am your bleeding green all over my deck," he interrupted, moving toward a medkit with that peculiar human efficiency. "And those galactic enforcement cruisers won't stop looking just because you're wounded." True, the bounty on my head could buy a small moon. After I'd slaughtered the Terran settlement on Rigel 7, humanity had marked me for death. Every species in the known galaxy feared the Vorthri, but humans hunted us. Why? The word. Escape before I could stop it. "Why did you pull me from the wreckage?" He paused, medical supplies in hand. "'Cause you asked me to." Impossible. I never asked. Warriors of my caste die before begging. Yet I remembered those final moments in my dying fighter, the human transport ship appearing. My voice crackling across the cum. "Please." Word that didn't exist in my language until 3 cycles ago. He approached slowly, hands visible. "Amaze." Mames Marcus Delacroix, captain of this rust bucket. "And you're going to sit still while I patch those holes, or you'll bleed out in the next hour." I could have killed him. Even wounded, even weakened, my natural weapons could shred a human in seconds. But something in his voice, not command, not fear, but simple certainty, made me lower my arms. As he worked, I studied him. Humans were supposed to be weak, soft prey animals who'd somehow stumbled into space travel. But his hands were steady, his movements precise. When he cleaned my wounds, he was gentle enough not to cause unnecessary pain, yet firm enough to do what needed doing. "You saved my life," I said finally. "Not yet." He applied a bioseal to my largest wound. "But I'm working on it. I killed your people. Hundreds of them. Children." His hands never paused. "I know. Then why?" "Because," he said, meeting my eyes, "someone asked me for help. That's what we do." For the first time in my existence, I began to understand why the galaxy feared humanity. It wasn't their weapons or their ships or their stubborn refusal to surrender. It was something far more dangerous than any military might. It was their inexplicable capacity to choose. Compassion over revenge, even when revenge would be justified, even when mercy made no logical sense, even when the creature they were helping had spent centuries painting their worlds red with human blood. The medical treatment took hours. During that time, Marcus worked in focused silence, occasionally humming what he called old earth blues. I learned that humans used music to process emotions, another incomprehensible behavior from a species that defied every natural law I'd ever known. "Your physiology is fascinating," he said, examining my secondary respiratory system. "These air filtration chambers are incredibly efficient. You could survive in atmospheres that would kill most species in minutes." "Including yours," I pointed out. "Including ours," he agreed without missing a beat. I watched him work, trying to understand. Among the Vorthri, medical attention was purely transactional. Warriors were repaired because they had value. The weak were left to die because they didn't. But Marcus tended to my wounds with the same care he might show a wounded pet, despite knowing exactly what those wounds had cost his species. "Tell me about Rigel 7, he said suddenly. My entire body tensed. "What? The attack? Tell me about it. Why would you want to know?" He glanced up from sealing a puncture wound. "Yes. You're going to carry it forever anyway. Might as well share the weight." No one had ever asked me to share anything. The Vorthri took what they wanted and destroyed what they couldn't use. Sharing was weakness. Collaboration was heresy. "I was ordered to cleanse the colony," I said. "Carefully, standard procedure. No survivors." "Ow!" But how did he know there was a but? I stared at him, this impossible creature who saw things that weren't supposed to be visible. But there was a youngling, human, small. It looked at me and ... I struggled with words that had no equivalent in my native tongue. Flower. Marcus nodded as if this made perfect sense. What did you do? I completed my mission. Words tasted like poison, all of it, including the child. He was quiet for a long moment, working on a particularly deep gash near my throat. Finally, that's why you're running. I'm not running. You're running, he said gently. From the Vorthri who would call you weak for hesitating. From the humans who would call you monster for not hesitating enough. From yourself for being caught between what you were made to be and what you chose to become. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to explain that warriors of my caste didn't experience doubt or guilt or any of the emotional weaknesses that plagued inferior species. But the words wouldn't come because he was right. How do you know? I whispered. Because I've been there. He finished with my throat wound and moved to check my leg joints. Different circumstances, same feeling. Us do things that peace can't forgive. You were a soldier? Colonial Marine? Served in the Outer Rim conflicts before first contact with your people? Lost a lot of friends to enemy action. Made a lot of enemies into corpses. His voice carried old pain, carefully controlled. Came home to a world that wanted to celebrate victories I couldn't even remember enjoying. So you became a freighter captain. So I became a freighter captain. He smiled grimly. Turns out hauling cargo is a lot more peaceful than hauling bodies. I felt something shift inside my chest, a sensation I'd never experienced before. What is this feeling? Recognition, he said. You're recognizing someone else who understands. Understanding. Another concept that didn't translate properly into Vorthri. We had words for knowledge, for tactical awareness, for threat assessment. But the idea that two different beings could share the same emotional experience was ... foreign, and somehow comforting. The flower, I said suddenly. It was yellow, with white edges. The youngling said it was called a daisy. Marcus's hands stilled for just a moment. Did you know what it meant? No. In human culture, daisies represent innocence, new beginnings. He resumed his work. Children give them to people they want to be friends with. The pain that hit me then was worse than any physical wound I'd ever received. The ship's engines hummed around us as we left the debris field behind. Marcus had moved us into hyperspace, putting distance between us and the galactic enforcement cruisers. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt something far more complex. Where are we going? I asked. Haven't decided yet. He was piloting from the captain's chair, occasionally checking sensor readings. Depends on what you want to do. What I want. The concept was absurd. I'm a weapon. Weapons don't want things. Sure they do. He spun his chair to face me. Do you want to do about the daisy? I didn't understand the question. It's dead. They're all dead. But the memory isn't. Neither are you. He leaned forward, those strange human eyes focused entirely on me. So what do you want to do with that? I'd spent 3 cycles running from that memory, trying to bury it beneath familiar patterns of violence and conquest. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that small hand offering a simple flower. Every time I dreamed, I heard the child's voice. This is for you, scary monster. Maybe you're just sad and need a friend. I want, started, then stopped. The words felt dangerous. Go ahead. I want it to mean something. Marcus nodded as if I'd said something profound instead of something impossible. Then we make it. Mean something? How? By choosing what comes next. He activated the ship's holographic display, showing our current position relative to known space. We were in the neutral zone, equidistant from human territory, Vorthri space, and the lawless. Systems where criminals and refugees disappeared. Option 1, he said, highlighting a route toward human space. We turn ourselves in to Terran command. You face trial for war crimes. I face charges for harboring a known enemy. We both probably get executed, but the galaxy gets closure. Studied the route. Not appealing. Option 2. The display shifted. We head for the outer rim. I drop you on some forgotten world where you can live quietly until you die of old age. You never hurt anyone again, but you never help anyone either. Option 3. He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. We do something completely crazy. The display zoomed out, showing the entire galactic map. Hundreds of systems. Thousands of worlds. Millions of settlements, colonies, and outposts scattered across impossible distances. There are places out there where humans and Vorthri both try to survive. Mining stations, trading posts, border worlds where people are too busy staying alive to worry about ancient grudges. His finger traced routes through disputed territory. Places that could use a former colonial marine and a reformed death singer. Reformed? Left. A sound like breaking glass. I am Vorthri. We don't reform. No, he agreed, but you do choose. Every single day you choose who you are. Yesterday, you chose to ask for help instead of dying with pride. Today, you chose to accept medical treatment from someone you should consider prey. Tomorrow, ... He shrugged. Tomorrow, you get to choose again. I stared at the star map, trying to process what he was suggesting. You want us to help people? I want us to try, together. The idea was insane. Vorthri were solitary creatures, apex predators who formed temporary alliances only for breeding or warfare. Humans were pack animals, but they didn't form packs with monsters. The galaxy would never accept it. Both our species would consider us traitors. It will be dangerous, I pointed out. Everything worthwhile is dangerous. We'll be hunted. We're already hunted. We might fail. We might succeed. I looked at him. Really looked. This human who had pulled me from wreckage, healed my wounds, and listened to my darkest confession without judgment. This impossible creature who spoke of choice as if it were something real, something powerful enough to overcome biology and programming and centuries of hatred. The youngling with the daisy, I said slowly. What was its name? Marcus consulted his tablet, accessing what must have been casualty reports from Rigel 7. After a moment, Emma Brightwater, age 7, daughter of the colony's chief botanist. Emma Brightwater. The first human name I'd ever bothered to learn. If we do this, I said, if we try to help people, I want to do it for Emma, and for all the others. I thought about that. All the others. Human children, and Vorthri hatchlings, and members of a dozen species caught between wars they hadn't started and hatred they hadn't earned. For all the others, I agreed. Marcus extended his hand, a human gesture of agreement. I stared at it for a long moment, then reached out with one razor-sharp claw to touch his palm. The skin didn't break. I was learning control. Partners, he asked. Partners, I said, and meant it. Our first job came sooner than expected. Marcus intercepted a distress signal from a mining station in the Kepler sector joint human Vorthri operation that had gone silent 3 days ago. The message was fragmentary, something about equipment failures and atmospheric breaches. Could be pirates, Marcus said, studying the transmission data. Or corporate sabotage. Or just really bad luck. I examined the station specifications on our display. Crodoc, Mining Consortium, mixed crew. 47 humans, 23 Vorthri, 6 others. You know anything about Crodoc? They hire exiles. Vorthri, who've been cast out from the clans. I paused, remembering my own recent exile. Desperate creatures. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. And desperate humans work alongside desperate Vorthri when the money's good enough. The mining station hung in space like a metallic tumor, its exterior. Lights flickering erratically. Our sensors detected life signs, but no communications. Whatever had happened here, it wasn't over. Standard approach? Marcus asked. Nothing about this is standard. I was studying the station's defensive capabilities. Crodoc stations are built like fortresses. Whatever got inside came through the front door. We docked at the main airlock. Station's atmosphere was stable, but the corridors felt wrong. too quiet, too empty. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red. The first body we found was human. Security guard plasma burns across his chest. The second was Vorthri, throat torn out by claws. The third was another human, this one killed by what looked like mining equipment. This wasn't an attack, I realized. This was chaos. Marcus knelt beside the human corpse, examining the wounds. Something spooked them, made them turn on each other. We pressed deeper into the station, following a trail of destruction that seemed random at first, but gradually revealed a pattern. The violence had started in the lower levels, near the mining operations, then spread upward through living quarters and common areas. I called, finding the source. The mining tunnel stretched into darkness, but our lights revealed something impossible. The rock walls were covered in a substance that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, but metal doesn't pulse with its own light. What is it? Marcus whispered. I touched one of the formations with a claw tip and immediately pulled back. Parasitic neural network. We call them dreamforms in Vorthri. They're supposed to be extinct. What do? They amplify negative emotions. Fear, rage, paranoia, everything gets magnified until rational thought becomes impossible. I backed away from the wall. The miners must have broken into a dormant colony. Marcus was already moving. How many people are still alive up there? Doesn't matter. If they're infected, they're beyond help. He stopped, turned back to face me. Says who? Says biology. Says reality. Says every military manual ever written about dreamworm infestations. I gestured at the pulsing walls. There's no cure. The infected tear themselves apart within hours. Every military manual, he repeated. Written by people who see infected populations as acceptable losses. I started to argue, then realized what he was really saying. Military manuals were written by commanders who had never watched a 7-year-old offer a flower to a monster. You have an idea? Dreamworms amplify what's already there, he said. But what if we gave them something different to amplify? I didn't understand. Different? How? Instead of answering, he headed for the station's communication center. I followed, my enhanced hearing picking up sounds from the upper levels, screaming, fighting the crack of breaking bones. The comm center was destroyed, but Marcus began pulling components from other systems. Help me build a transmitter, he said. Something that can broadcast on multiple frequencies simultaneously. What are we broadcasting? Music? I thought he'd lost his mind. They're tearing each other apart up there. And you want to play them a song? Not just any song. He was working frantically, his hands moving with the precision of someone who'd built jury-rigged equipment under combat conditions. Something specific. Something that triggers different neural pathways. I watched him work, slowly beginning to understand. Music affected human brain chemistry. If dreamworms amplified neurochemical responses, ... It's insane, I said. It's hope. He replied, within 20 minutes, we had a functional transmitter powerful enough to flood the entire station with audio. Marcus scrolled through his personal music collection, searching for something specific. There, he said, selecting a file. Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, Fourth Movement. Why that one? 'Cause it's about joy overcoming suffering. It's about unity, transcending division. He looked at me seriously. About the possibility that all beings, no matter how different, can be family. He activated the transmission. At first, nothing changed. The sounds of violence continued above us. But gradually, slowly, the screaming began to diminish. I breathed maybe, or maybe we're too late. But I could hear at the change in the station's ambient noise. Fewer crashes. Less shouting. And underneath it all, the swelling music that spoke of dreams larger than fear. We need to get up there, Marcus said. If this works, they're going to need medical attention. If it doesn't work, then we die trying to help them. Said it so matter-of-factly that I almost laughed. This human who faced extinction with the same calm expression he'd worn while bandaging my wounds. Partners, I reminded him. Partners, he agreed. Together, we climbed toward the upper levels, following Beethoven's impossible promise into whatever waited above. The first survivor we encountered was a young Vorthri female, crouched in the corner of a storage bay, with her claws buried deep in her own carapace. The dreamworm infection had turned her against herself, but the music was slowly pulling her back from the edge of madness. "Easy," I whispered, approaching in the traditional Vorthri, peaceful posture, arms spread, claws retracted, throat exposed. "I am Crystal, once of the Venom Walker clan. You are safe now." Her eyes were wild, unfocused. "The humans. They came for us in the dark, with burning eyes and metal teeth." "Hallucinations," I told Marcus quietly. "The parasites make everything look like a threat." Marcus nodded and began treating her self-inflicted wounds with supplies from the medical kit he'd grabbed from our ship. The female hissed at first, then gradually relaxed as the music continued to flow through the station's speakers. "What's your name?" I asked her. "Veltar, mining engineer." She looked confused, as if awakening from a nightmare. There were others. Humans and Vorthri working together. We were friends. The word came out uncertain, as if she couldn't believe such a thing was possible. We found them scattered throughout the upper levels. Survivors huddled in barricaded rooms, wounded but alive. Humans and Vorthri who had been trying to kill each other hours earlier now sat side by side, sharing water and helping treat each other's injuries. The music had done more than calm their fear. It had reminded them of something the dreamworms couldn't corrupt: the connections they'd formed working together in the depths of space, where survival depended on cooperation rather than conquest. Marcus murmured, watching a burly human miner gently wrap bandages around a Vorthri's injured limb. "They remember who they really are." But not all the stories had happy endings. We found 17 bodies scattered throughout the station, casualties of the hours when terror had ruled absolutely. 17 beings who had died before the music could reach them, I said, standing over the body of an elderly human woman. "We should have been faster. We saved 33 lives, Marcus replied firmly. "That's 33 people who get to go home. 33 people who get to choose what comes next." I was learning that humans measured success differently than Vorthri. Where my people saw only absolute victory or crushing defeat, humans saw incremental progress. They celebrated partial successes and learned from incomplete failures. It was a remarkably optimistic way to view the universe. The station's surviving leaders, a human supervisor named Rodriguez and a Vorthri foreman called HFY, met with us in the undamaged section of the administrative level. Both looked exhausted, but their eyes held something I was beginning to recognize: gratitude mixed with hope. "The company will want a full report," Rodriguez said. "I'll need to know how you stopped the infection." "Will they believe it?" Marcus asked. Rodriguez looked at HFY, who made the Vorthri equivalent of a shrug. "Does it matter? We're alive. Our people are alive. The mine is secure. More than that," HFY added. "We are united now in ways we were not before. Shared terror, shared salvation. The bonds formed in crisis do not easily break." I watched the survivors working together to repair damage and tend to the wounded. Human technology operated by Vorthri. Claws. Vorthri medical techniques adapted for human physiology. Two species that had been killing each other across the galaxy for decades, now functioning as a single community. "This is what you meant," I said to Marcus, "about making the daisy mean something." He smiled. "Every choice creates ripples." Emma's kindness reached across space and time to save 33 lives, but we did the saving. We were the delivery mechanism. The choice to be kind, to offer help, to see others as worthy of protection that started with a 7-year-old girl and a flower. Rodriguez cleared his throat. "If you don't mind me asking, who are you people exactly?" "The company doesn't have any rescue teams in this sector?" Marcus and I exchanged glances. We'd been operating under false IDs, but these people deserved better than deception. "We're freelancers," Marcus said carefully. "We go places where help is needed but not expected." "Mercenaries?" HFY asked, but not with suspicion, more like professional curiosity. "Partners," I said. "We do what needs to be done." "Well," Rodriguez said, "what needs to be done right now is getting this station back to full operation and making sure word gets out about what you accomplished here." There are other mining operations in disputed space, other mixed crews working in dangerous conditions. Other places where people might need help, Marcus added. As we prepared to leave, Veltar approached me hesitantly. Crystal of the Venom Walker clan. I have heard stories. You were Deathsinger, slayer of worlds. I tensed, expecting fear or hatred. Instead, she continued, but today you are Lifebringer, savior of the lost, which is your true nature. Was a question I'd been asking myself since Marcus pulled me from the wreckage. Looking at the station around us, the mixed crews working in harmony, the lives saved by an impossible combination of human music and Vorthri determination, thought I finally had an answer. Both, I said, and I choose which one to be. She nodded as if this made perfect sense. Then choose well, sister. The galaxy has enough Deathsingers. We need more who sing of life. 3 months after Krodock Station, our reputation had begun to spread through the underground networks that connected the galaxy's forgotten places. Mining operations, trading posts, frontier colonies, and research stations and Niware beings from different species tried to coexist. Our names appeared in whispered conversations. Marcus and I had established a simple operational philosophy. Go where others couldn't or wouldn't. Help where help was needed. Ask no questions about past allegiances. We were neutral agents in a galaxy that had forgotten what neutrality looked like. Our ship had evolved to match our mission. Marcus had installed additional medical bays and emergency supplies. I had added defensive systems and communication arrays. The cargo holds now carried food, medicine, and equipment for a dozen different species. We'd even picked up a crew member, a young Kaleri linguist named Zeph, who'd lost their family in a border skirmish, and now helped us navigate the complex diplomatic challenges of multi-species. Rescue operations. The call that changed everything came from a place we'd never heard of, Blackwater Station. A research facility in the demilitarized zone studying something called harmonic resonance in xenological neural networks. Translation? Marcus asked Zeph. They're trying to figure out how different species' brains respond to the same stimuli, Zeph explained in their melodic triple-toned voice. Music, emotional frequencies, telepathic fields, anything that might explain how consciousness works across evolutionary boundaries. I found this interesting. Like the Dreamworm experiment? Probably, Zeph agreed, but their distress signal is ... unusual. They played the transmission for us.
8.
It started normally standard emergency protocols, coordinates, request for immediate assistance. But underneath the words was something else, a harmonic pattern that made my carapace itch and caused Marcus to frown in concentration. It's not just a message, I realized. It's a test. Test of what? Marcus asked. Whether we're intelligent enough to hear what they're really saying. We spent hours analyzing the harmonic pattern, running it through every decryption algorithm in our ship's database. Finally, Zeph cracked it. It's a neural compatibility frequency, they announced excitedly. The research team has discovered something that requires beings from multiple species to work together, literally together, with synchronized brain patterns. And they can't do it alone, Marcus concluded. Apparently not. The message is specifically designed to attract individuals who've already demonstrated successful interspecies cooperation. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. They know who we are. More than that, Marcus said grimly. They know what we've become. Blackwater Station hung in space like a crystalline flower, multiple research modules arranged in perfect geometric harmony. As we approached, I could see that its design incorporated architectural principles from at least 6 different species, an aesthetic statement that spoke of radical collaboration. The docking bay welcomed us with a universal greeting pattern. Lights, sounds, and atmospheric adjustments designed to make any visitor feel comfortable regardless of their biology. Someone here understood that cooperation began with basic hospitality. Dr. Liana. Karzan met us at the airlock, a human woman in her 50s with silver hair and eyes that seemed to see more than they should. Behind her stood a diverse group. Vorthri, humans, Kaleri, and others I didn't immediately recognize. Welcome to Blackwater, she said, extending her hand to Marcus and offering me the traditional Vorthri greeting of respectful distance. We've been following your work. Our work? I asked carefully. Krodak Station, the freighter convoy in the Magellanic Drift, the refugee camp in the Outer Spiral. Her eyes held warmth and something else urgency. You've been proving something we've theorized for years, that conscious beings can transcend their evolutionary programming when they choose cooperation over conflict. Zeph stepped forward, their crest fluttering with curiosity. What exactly are you researching here? Dr. Karzan gestured for us to follow her through corridors lined with impossible artwork sculptures that seemed to shift perspective depending on the viewer's angle. Paintings that told different stories to different species, visual cortexes. Musical installations that harmonize with the listener's heartbeat. We're studying the neural basis of empathy, she explained. Specifically, whether it's possible to artificially induce the brain states that allow beings from different species to genuinely understand each other. Artificially induce? Marcus sounded skeptical. Through technology, yes. Harmonic resonance chambers that synchronize neural activity across species barriers. Theoretical empathy enhancement that could eliminate the fear and mistrust that drives interstellar conflict. She led us into the main research lab, where dozens of scientists from various species worked with equipment I'd never seen before. The air hummed with energy that made my combat implants tingle. The problem, Dr. Karzan continued, is that our early tests have been ... intense. We need test subjects who've already demonstrated the ability to maintain individual identity while experiencing genuine interspecies emotional connection. And do you think we qualify? I asked. Think you're the only ones who qualify? She turned to face us directly. What we're attempting has never been done before. If it works, it could end the cycles of violence that have defined galactic civilization. For millennia, if it fails, ... we die horribly? Marcus suggested with dark humor. Worse, you might lose yourselves completely. Your individual consciousness could be permanently merged with alien thought patterns. You'd still be alive, but you wouldn't be you? I looked at Marcus, remembering our conversation about choice and consequence. We'd come so far from that moment in his cargo hold, but every step had led us to this decision. When do we start? I asked. Dr. Karzan smiled, the expression of someone who'd found exactly what she'd been looking for. Tomorrow. But tonight, I want to show you something that will help you understand what we're really trying to accomplish here. She led us to an observation deck overlooking the station's central chamber. Below us, dozens of beings from different species sat in connected meditation pods, their brain activity displayed on surrounding monitors. The patterns were chaotic at first, but gradually, slowly, they began to synchronize, and in that synchronization, something beautiful happened. The individuals didn't disappear. They remained themselves. But they also became part of something larger, connected in ways that transcended language and biology and the ancient fears that kept species apart. This is what we're working toward, Dr. Karzan said softly. Not the elimination of difference, but the celebration of connection. Not the end of individual identity, but the beginning of collective understanding. I watched the synchronized patterns and felt something I'd never experienced before. Hope for a galaxy where children didn't have to offer flowers to monsters because there were no monsters left. Only beings. Different but connected, choosing. Understanding over fear. Tomorrow, I said to Marcus. Tomorrow, he agreed. The resonance chamber was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Crystalline walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, while the floor contained neural interface, pods designed to accommodate the physiological requirements of multiple species. The air itself seemed alive with potential. Standard procedure, Dr. Karzan explained as her team prepared the equipment, would be to start with simple emotional synchronization between two individuals of the same species. But we don't have time for standard procedure. Why not? Asked, settling into his pod while technicians attached neural monitoring equipment. Because this facility is being shut down. The Galactic Council has decided our research is too dangerous to continue. Her voice carried bitter frustration. They want empathy research that supports existing power structures, not empathy research that might eliminate the need for those structures entirely. I allowed the technicians to calibrate my pod systems for Vor3 physiology. How long do we have? 72 hours before the enforcement fleet arrives. ID2 prove that artificial empathy enhancement can work, or watch decades of research disappear into classified archives. Zeph stood at the control console, their crest fluttering with nervous energy. Neural interface is stable. Harmonic generators are online. All biological systems are showing green. Dr. Karzan moved to a central position where she could monitor all readings simultaneously. I need to ask you both. Are you absolutely certain about this? The synchronization process will expose every thought, every memory, every emotion. You'll experience each other's consciousness directly. Marcus looked at me across the chamber. We've been partners for months. We've shared everything else. Not like this, I warned him. You'll see what I really am, not the reformed version. Not the partner who chooses cooperation. You'll experience my memories of killing your people. The pleasure I took in their fear. The satisfaction of watching your colonies burn. His expression never changed. You'll see my memories of the Outer Rim War, the civilians I couldn't save, the soldiers I killed who were just following orders, the times I chose military objectives over human lives. We stared at each other across impossible distance and complete understanding. Together? He asked. Together, I replied, Dr. Karzan. Activated the sequence at first. The sensation was gentle, a warm tingling that spread through my nervous system like sunlight through water. The chamber's walls began to pulse in rhythm with our heartbeats, creating a visual representation of our individual neural patterns. Then the barriers began to dissolve. I felt Marcus's consciousness touching mine not invasively, but like two streams joining at a confluence. His memories became accessible, his emotions comprehensible in ways that transcended species barriers, and he felt mine. The moment he experienced my memory of Rigel 7, felt his shock, his horror, his revulsion. Underneath those expected reactions was something else. Recognition of the pain that had driven me to seek meaning in destruction. Understanding of the programming that had shaped me into a weapon. He didn't excuse what I'd done. He didn't forgive the unforgivable. But he saw the being beneath the monster, the conscious entity capable of choice. Growth, change. In return, I experienced his memories of loss and war. I felt his grief for friends killed in battles that achieved nothing. I understood his guilt over orders followed when conscience demanded rebellion. I saw how he'd chosen isolation over the risk of causing more harm. But I also saw his capacity for hope, his impossible belief that broken beings could choose to become healers, his faith that consciousness itself was sacred, regardless of the form it inhabited. The synchronization deepened. Our individual thoughts began to merge, creating something neither fully human nor fully Vor3. I could feel Marcus's tactical awareness combining with my predatory instincts. His compassionate nature flowed into my warrior's discipline. We became a hybrid consciousness that retained the best qualities of both species while transcending the limitations of either through our merged awareness. We sensed other minds in the facility, Dr. Carson's burning curiosity, Zeph's hopeful excitement, the research team's mixture of fear and wonder. Each consciousness was distinct, yet connected, individual, yet part of a larger pattern. Incredible, Dr. Karzan whispered, her voice seeming to come from both outside the chamber and inside our shared thoughts. Neural synchronization is at 97%. You're maintaining individual identity while achieving perfect, empathic connection. But something else was happening. The chamber's resonance field was expanding, reaching beyond the research facility into the surrounding space. We could feel other mine ships' crews, space station inhabitants, even the approaching enforcement fleet. The artificial empathy network was growing exponentially. Warning, Zeph called out. The resonance cascade is exceeding design parameters. It's affecting every conscious being within a 50 light-year radius. I felt panic from the research team, but through our shared consciousness, Marcus and I understood what was really happening. The technology hadn't malfunctioned. It had succeeded beyond all expectations. We were witnessing the birth of something unprecedented, a voluntary neural network that connected minds without erasing individuality. On ships throughout the sector, human crews were suddenly feeling what their Vorthri counterparts experienced. Vorthri warriors were understanding human motivations for the first time. Members of other species found themselves connected to thoughts and emotions they'd never imagined possible. "Should we shut it down?" Dr. Karzan asked urgently. Through our merged consciousness, Marcus and I considered the question. We could feel the fear radiating from beings who'd never experienced true empathy before, but we could also feel something else: wonder, recognition, the gradual realization that consciousness was fundamentally similar across species barriers. "No," we said simultaneously, our voices harmonizing in ways that shouldn't have been possible. "Let it grow. The enforcement fleet will understand," I continued, my individual voice returning as I learned to maintain identity within unity. "For the first time in galactic history, they'll understand why they're fighting." Marcus nodded, his consciousness still intertwined with mine but distinctly his own. "They'll feel what their enemies feel. They'll know that every being they've considered alien or monstrous is just another conscious entity trying to survive and find meaning." The resonance cascade reached the enforcement fleet. Through our expanded awareness, we felt the moment when the ship's crews experienced genuine interspecies empathy. Human admirals suddenly understood Vorthri honor codes. Vorthri commanders grasped human concepts of justice. The fleet's advance stopped as every being aboard began to question the assumptions that had driven centuries of conflict. "This is impossible," Dr. Karzan breathed, watching the readouts. "The network is self-sustaining. It's creating permanent neural pathway modifications that will persist even after the artificial resonance ends." "Not impossible," Marcus said, reaching across the chamber to touch my claw with his hand. "Inevitable. Consciousness wants to connect. We've just given it the tools." The chamber's walls had become transparent, revealing the space around Blackwater Station. Ships from dozens of species hung motionless in the void, not because their engines had failed, but because their crews were too busy experiencing genuine understanding to remember why they'd come here to fight. Through our shared awareness, we felt the moment when violence became unthinkable, when the fear that drove interstellar conflict dissolved in the face of direct emotional connection, when beings across the galaxy realized that their supposed enemies were just other versions of themselves. "What happens now?" Zeph asked, their voice filled with awe. Marcus and I looked at each other. Our individual consciousnesses still linked but separate. We could feel the network extending beyond this system, touching minds across vast distances. The artificial empathy enhancement was becoming something organica. It's permanent change in how conscious beings related to each other. "Now," I said, "we teach them what we learned. Choice is stronger than programming," Marcus added. "That understanding is more powerful than fear. That consciousness itself is sacred, regardless of the form it takes." Dr. Karzan was crying tears of joy, relief, and overwhelming hope. "You've done it. You've actually done it. You've created the foundation for lasting peace." But as the initial euphoria faded, I felt something else through our connection: responsibility. The network we'd helped create would require guidance, protection, nurturing. Beings who had spent millennia fearing each other wouldn't learn to trust overnight. "The work is just beginning," I said. Marcus nodded. "Someone needs to help them navigate this new reality. Someone needs to show them that unity doesn't require uniformity." "Partners?" he asked, using our old ritual. "Partners," I agreed. But this time the word meant something different. We weren't just two beings choosing to work together. We were the first conscious entities to successfully bridge the gap between species. The proof that artificial empathy could become genuine understanding. We were the beginning of something the galaxy had never seen before. True interspecies consciousness. 6 months after the Blackwater incident, as historians would eventually name it, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The empathy network had spread to every inhabited system, creating permanent changes in how different species interacted. Wars didn't end overnight, but they became impossible to justify once combatants could feel each other's pain. Marcus and I found ourselves at the center of this transformation, serving as mediators, teachers, and living proof that consciousness could transcend biology. Our ship had become a mobile embassy, carrying diplomats, researchers, and refugees between worlds that were learning to see each other as family rather than threats. Status report, Marcus said as we approached the hegemony border, where one of the galaxy's oldest conflicts was finally approaching. Resolution. Zeph's crest fluttered with excitement as they processed incoming communications. Both fleets are maintaining peaceful positions. The Terran delegation and the Vor-3 War Council have agreed to formal negotiations. Impossible would have been the word I'd have used 7 months ago, I said, watching the view screen as ships that had been trying to destroy each other for decades now hung side by side in space. The negotiations took place aboard Blackwater Station, which had become a symbol of successful interspecies cooperation. Dr. Karzan met us at the docking bay, her face showing the exhaustion of someone who had been working non-stop to understand the phenomenon she'd helped create. How are they adapting? Marcus asked as we walked through corridors, now filled with beings from dozens of species working together. Better than expected? Worse than hoped? She replied diplomatically. The empathy network prevents outright violence, but it doesn't eliminate disagreement or competition. It just makes everyone understand why those conflicts exist. We entered the main conference chamber, where representatives from the Terran Federation and the Vor-3 hegemony sat across from each other. The tension was palpable, but it was the tension of difficult negotiation rather than impending war. Admiral Petrovsky, the human delegation leader, looked up as we entered. "Ah, our miracle workers arrive. Perhaps you can help us resolve a particular sticking point," or Leader Thokmer, his scarred carapace bearing the marks of decades of battle, gestured acknowledgement in my direction. The humans wish to discuss reparations for civilian casualties. They claim our raids on their colonies were unjustified. And the Vor-3 maintain that human expansion into disputed territories violated ancient territorial agreements, Admiral Petrovsky countered. Both sides have legitimate grievances. I felt Marcus's thoughts through our permanent mental link, not the overwhelming merger of the resonance chamber, but a subtle awareness that had persisted since our synchronization. He was thinking about Emma Brightwater and her yellow daisy, about choices and consequences, about the difference between justice and revenge. "May I suggest an alternative approach?" I said, moving to stand between the two delegations. "Rather than arguing about who was justified, what if we focused on who we want to become?" "Meaning?" Dokmar asked. "Every species represented here has done things they regret. Humans have committed atrocities. Vor-3 have slaughtered innocents. Other races have their own dark chapters." I paused, feeling the weight of my own memories. But the empathy network has shown us something unprecedented, the possibility of choosing differently. Marcus stepped forward. "The question isn't whether past actions can be justified. It's whether future actions will honor the consciousness we've all learned to recognize in each other." Admiral Petrovsky leaned back in her chair. "You're suggesting we move beyond traditional concepts of justice entirely." "I'm suggesting we embrace restorative rather than retributive justice," Marcus replied. "Instead of punishing past wrongs, we focus on creating future right." The negotiations continued for 3 days. Through the empathy network, each participant could feel the other's genuine desire for peace, their fear of renewed conflict, their hope for a better future. It didn't make the discussions easy, but it made them honest. The final agreement was unlike any treaty in galactic history. Instead of territorial concessions or reparations, it established joint colonies where multiple species would work together on projects benefiting all participants. Research stations studying consciousness and empathy, educational exchanges, cultural preservation programs, economic partnerships based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. The Brightwater Accords, Admiral Petrovsky announced as the signing ceremony concluded. Named after a child who showed us that kindness can transcend any boundary, I felt tears of physiological response I'd learned from humans gathering in my optical sensors. Emma Brightwater's simple gesture had rippled across space and time to create this moment. A 7-year-old's flower had become the seed of galactic peace. But even as we celebrated this achievement, I could feel through the network that our work was far from finished. Peace was fragile. Understanding required constant nurturing. Galaxy was full of beings who hadn't yet learned to see beyond their own species' perspective. Where to next? Zeph asked, as we prepared to depart. Marcus consulted our mission logs. The outer spiral has several colonies struggling with interspecies integration. The core worlds need help establishing empathy centers. And there are still unexplored regions where first contact protocols might benefit from our experience. Everywhere. In other words, I said. Everywhere, he agreed. For however long it takes. As our ship pulled away from Blackwater Station, I watched the treaty signatories' boarding vessels that would carry news of the Accords to every corner of the galaxy. Human ships flying alongside Vorthri craft. Mixed crews working in harmony. The physical manifestation of consciousness transcending biology. Do you think it will last? Zeph asked quietly. Through our link? I felt Marcus's response before he spoke it aloud. As long as there are beings willing to choose understanding over fear, connection over isolation, hope over despair, then it will last, I said with certainty. Because consciousness itself demands connection. We've just learned to listen to that demand. The stars stretched before us. Each point of light representing worlds where conscious beings were learning to see each other as family. Our ship carried the tools and knowledge to help them succeed. Our minds carried the proof that transformation was possible, and our hearts carried Emma Brightwater's flower, blooming eternal across the infinite dark. 2 years after the Brightwater Accords, the galaxy had settled into what historians called the Great Awakening, a period of unprecedented cooperation and cultural exchange. But with understanding came new challenges that no one had anticipated. Our ship received an urgent distress call from New Harmony, one of the first mixed-species colonies established under the Accords. The message was brief but troubling. Empathy overflow. Population experiencing collective consciousness collapse. Immediate intervention required. What does that mean? Zeph asked, as we adjusted course. Dr. Carson's voice came through our system from her new research facility. We'd maintained close contact as she studied the long-term effects of the empathy network. It means they've become too connected. Individual identity is dissolving into collective consciousness. Marcus frowned. I thought the network preserved individual identity. It does, under normal circumstances. But New Harmony has the highest concentration of network-enhanced beings in the galaxy. Over time, the constant empathic connection has begun to blur the boundaries between minds. I felt a chill of recognition. They're losing themselves. Exactly. If we can't reverse it, every high-concentration colony in the galaxy could face the same fate. New Harmony appeared on our view screen as a pastoral world of rolling hills and crystalline cities that reflected the architectural preferences of a dozen species. But our sensors detected something alarming. The entire population was moving in perfect synchronization. The colonists met us at the spaceport as a single entity, hundreds of beings from different species walking in perfect unison, speaking in harmonized voices, their eyes reflecting shared consciousness rather than individual awareness. Welcome, healers, they said simultaneously. We are New Harmony. We are one mind, one purpose, one being, experiencing reality through multiple forms. Marcus and I exchanged troubled glances. Through our own connection, I felt his horror at seeing individual consciousness subsumed into collective identity. Where is Governor Martinez? I asked. Where is Engineer Colvin? We are Martinez. We are Colvin. We are all beings who chose unity over separation. Their voices remained perfectly synchronized. Why do you resist the peace we have found? Because peace without individuality isn't peace, Marcus replied firmly. It's extinction with a smile. We established a base camp at the colony's outskirts, as far from the population center as possible while still maintaining communication links. Dr. Carson arrived within hours, bringing equipment designed to analyze and potentially reverse empathic oversaturation. The readings are unprecedented, she said, studying her instruments. Their neural patterns have synchronized completely. They're functioning as a single, distributed consciousness across multiple bodies. Can it be reversed? I asked. Unknown? We've never encountered anything like this before. She paused, considering options. We might be able to create localized disruption fields that force neural desynchronization. But, Marcus prompted. But if the merger has become permanent at a biological level, forcing separation could cause massive brain damage. We might be looking at the choice between collective consciousness and mass death. Through our connection, I felt Marcus's determination crystallizing into a plan. What if we don't try to separate them from each other? What if we try to separate them from the network itself? Dr. Karzan looked confused. The network is what allows empathic connection in the first place. Exactly. The colonists were fine before they became network enhanced. If we could temporarily sever their connection to the artificial empathy system, they might regain individual identity, I finished, understanding his reasoning. But they'd lose the ability to empathically connect with other species. Better than losing themselves entirely, Marcus said grimly. The procedure required building a massive neural dampening field around the entire colony. For 3 days, we worked alongside automated systems to construct the necessary equipment, while the colonists watched with their eerily synchronized attention. You seek to fracture our unity, they said on the 3rd day. You would return us to the loneliness of separate consciousness. Why do you inflict this suffering upon us? Because consciousness without choice isn't consciousness, I replied. It's programming, and programming can be changed. When we activated the dampening field, the effect was immediate and traumatic. The colonists collapsed as one, their synchronized movements dissolving into chaos. For terrifying moments, they writhed in apparent agony as their merged consciousness fragmented back into individual minds. Then, gradually, they began to stand up as themselves. Governor Martinez was the first to speak, her voice shaky but undeniably. Her own? What happened to us? You became too connected, Marcus explained gently. The empathy network merged your consciousness with everyone around you. Engineer Colvin flexed his claws experimentally, as if rediscovering his own body. I remember we were all one being, experiencing reality through multiple perspectives simultaneously. It was beautiful and terrifying. Dr. Karzan was running medical scans on several colonists. Neural patterns are returning to baseline. Individual identity markers are reestablishing themselves, but... She paused, frowning at her readings. But what? I asked. They've retained enhanced empathic capabilities. Not network-level connection, but significantly higher emotional sensitivity than baseline for their species. Governor Martinez looked around at her fellow colonists, who were slowly reacquainting themselves with individual identity. We can still feel each other, but we're ourselves again. Is that going to be permanent? We don't know, Doctor. Karzan admitted. You're the first beings to experience consciousness merger and successfully return to individuality. You're essentially a new form of life. Over the following weeks, we observed the colonists as they adapted to their enhanced but individual consciousness. They could empathically connect with each other and with other species at will, but they remained distinct personalities with their own thoughts, dreams, and choices. They had become what Marcus and I were, beings who bridged the gap between individual identity and collective understanding. We're not unique anymore, I observed as we prepared to leave New Harmony. No, Marcus agreed. And that's exactly what the galaxy needs. Beings who can choose when to connect and when to remain separate. Individuals who understand that consciousness is both personal and universal. Governor Martinez approached us at the spaceport. We wanted to thank you for saving our individuality, but also for showing us that enhanced empathy doesn't have to mean loss of self. What will you do now? Zeph asked. We'll continue the colony, but with better safeguards against oversaturation. We'll share what we've learned with other high-concentration settlements. She smiled. We'll teach them that unity and individuality can coexist. As our ship lifted off from New Harmony, I felt something shift in the galaxy-wide empathy network. The colonists' experience had created a new template, a way for enhanced beings to maintain connection without losing themselves. Another ripple, Marcus said, feeling the same shift through our bond. Another choice, I agreed. Another step toward consciousness becoming what it was always meant to be. Behind us, New Harmony continued its impossible experiment in balanced empathy. Ahead of us, the stars waited with new challenges and new opportunities to help consciousness grow. The galaxy was learning that true unity came not from erasing differences, but from celebrating them while maintaining fundamental connection. It was a lesson worth spreading to every world, every species, every conscious being in the infinite dark. 5 years after I first begged a human stranger for help, the galaxy had transformed into something unprecedented in recorded history. The empathy network had evolved beyond our wildest projections, creating not uniformity but diversity, millions of species, maintaining their unique characteristics while sharing fundamental understanding. Marcus and I stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, the new galactic capital, built at the confluence of major hyperspace lanes. Through the transparent walls, we could see ships from every known species docked alongside each other in perfect harmony. Status report, Marcus requested from the station's central AI, Galactic Peace Index at 94% and stable. The AI responded in a voice that somehow managed to sound like every species simultaneously. Interspecies cooperation projects numbering in the millions. Current conflicts, 12 territorial disputes, all proceeding through peaceful arbitration. 0 active military conflicts. 0 active military conflicts. In a galaxy that had known warfare for millennia, those words still carried the power to amaze. Incoming priority transmission, Zeph announced from their station. They'd become our permanent partner, their linguistic skills invaluable as we encountered new species emerging from previously isolated regions of space. Dr. Carson's face appeared on the main screen, transmitted from her research facility in the Andromeda. Approach vector. Marcus Crickstal, I need you to see this. We've made contact with something extraordinary. The transmission shifted to show long-range sensor data. Deep in the void between galaxies, massive structures hung in spacenaut ships or stations. But something organic and impossibly vast. They call themselves the Gardeners, Dr. Carzon continued. They've been watching our galaxy for millions of years, waiting for us to develop what they term consciousness-level civilization. I felt Marcus's excitement through our bond. First contact with an extragalactic species. More than that, Dr. Carzon said. They claim to be the ones who originally seeded empathy-capable neural structures across different species. They've been guiding the evolution of consciousness itself. The implications were staggering. If the Gardeners were responsible for the neural similarities that made the empathy network possible, then our transformation wasn't an accident. It was the culmination of a plan millions of years in the making. They want to meet with you specifically, Dr. Carzon added. They say you represent the first successful example of cross-species consciousness integration and that you're ready for the next phase. Next phase of what? Seth asked. Evolution. 3 days later, we were aboard our ship, traveling toward the galactic rim where the Gardeners waited. The journey gave us time to contemplate what this meeting might mean. Are we ready for this? Marcus asked as we entered the void between galaxies. Does anyone ever feel ready to meet their makers? I replied, the Gardener ship, if it could be called a ship, was larger than a small moon and appeared to be grown rather than built. Organic curves flowed into crystalline structures that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. As we approached, I felt something I'd never experienced before. The presence of consciousness so vast and ancient that it made the entire empathy network feel like a whisper. They welcomed us not through communication arrays, but directly into our minds. The sensation was overwhelming, like being embraced by the universe itself. Welcome, young consciousness. The voice that was not a voice filled our awareness. You have done well with the gifts we planted in your species' neural architecture. You created the empathy network. Marcus asked aloud. We created the potential for it. You chose to actualize that potential. That choice, the decision to transcend biology in favor of connection, was the test we have waited eons to witness. I felt humbled and terrified in equal measure. What happens now? Now you join the greater community? Your galaxy is proven? It's self-capable of conscious evolution. You are ready to take your place among the Gardner civilizations. The ship's walls became transparent, revealing space beyond our previous understanding. Galaxies hung like dewdrops on an infinite web, each one connected to others by streams of pure consciousness. We were seeing the universe as it truly was, not empty space punctuated by islands of matter, but a vast network of aware civilizations, sharing thoughts across cosmic distances. Each galaxy that achieves consciousness-level civilization joins the network, the Gardners explained. Your species now have access to knowledge, wisdom, and connections spanning the entire universe. Through our ship's sensors, we could feel other galactic consciousnesses touching our awareness. Civilizations that had transcended war millions of years ago. Species that had learned to manipulate reality through pure thought. Cultures that existed as pure information, having left physical form behind entirely. What about individuals, I asked. Will we lose ourselves in something this vast? The universe needs both individual consciousness and collective awareness. You have learned to balance these forces within your galaxy. Now you must learn to balance them across cosmic scales. Marcus reached out to take my claw in his hand. Together? Together? I agreed. But as we prepared to fully join the cosmic consciousness network, I felt one last pull toward the galaxy we were leaving behind. Somewhere in that spiral of stars, beings were still learning to choose empathy over fear. Children were offering flowers to monsters. Partners were choosing trust, despite every biological imperative that demanded suspicion. Your connection to your home galaxy will never be severed, the Gardners assured me, sensing my concern. You will serve as bridges between local and cosmic consciousness. Your role as healers and teachers continues. It simply expands to encompass all of existence. The transition was unlike anything we'd experienced during our empathic synchronization. Instead of merging with another mind, we were connecting to the fundamental structure of consciousness itself, the force that turned matter into awareness, thought into reality, loneliness into love. Through the cosmic network, I felt Marcus's wonder as he experienced the thoughts of beings from galaxies so distant that light from their stars had not yet reached our old home. I shared his amazement as we touched minds that had been contemplating the nature of existence since before our son was born, but most importantly, I felt our connection to each other remaining strong and distinct within the infinite web. We were part of something unimaginably vast, but we were still us. Still the human who had chosen compassion over revenge, and the Vorthri who had learned that choice was stronger than programming. Welcome to the true universe, the Gardner said as our consciousness expanded to encompass realities beyond imagination. Welcome to the community of minds that spans all existence. Welcome to the next chapter of what consciousness can become. As our awareness stretched across cosmic distances, I felt one final ripple flowing back toward our home galaxy. The story of a human freighter captain and a Vorthri death singer who had chosen partnership over enmity was spreading through the universal consciousness network, inspiring civilizations we would never meet in forms we could never imagine. Somewhere, in the vast web of existence, a young consciousness was learning that mercy was stronger than justice, that understanding conquered fear, that love transcended biology. Somewhere, a child was offering a flower to a monster, and the monster was choosing to accept it. The universe itself smiled at the beauty of that choice. Consciousness continued its eternal dance between individual and collective, local and cosmic, finite and infinite. We were home. We were everywhere. We were the bridge between what was and what could be. And in that role, we had found our truest purpose, to help consciousness itself become everything it was meant to be.